Hey mamas, and welcome to the Entering Motherhood podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Marie Bilger, a wife, mom of two, VBAC mama, and doula. Here we integrate holistic mindfulness and evidence-based practices to support you on your unique motherhood journey. Whether you're trying to conceive, pregnant, newly postpartum, or supporting mamas in this stage of life, you'll feel empowered and informed as you embrace what lies ahead. Join us every episode to learn from professionals, special guests, and moms just like you, ensuring that you know what you need to know and discover things that you didn't know before. I believe in you. Let's doula this and let's navigate the transition of entering motherhood together. Hello. Hi, mamas. Today's episode is one I've been really excited to do because we're getting real about pushing in birth. And yep, we're diving right into that final stretch of labor, that moment that movies always seem to over dramatize. And if you are pregnant right now or planning to be, or maybe you're just curious about what actually happens during that second stage of labor, this episode is going to be for you. So I'm super excited to talk about this. I've gotten questions before from clients. Do you help with pushing? Do we prep for pushing? What goes on? It's one of those things that is always just kind of in your head, you're thinking about, and it's kind of a mystery, even though it's the part of birth that we hear so much about. So let's first just talk about what pushing actually is. Pushing happens during what's called the second stage of labor. But before we dive into that, let's kind of zoom back out and look at the bigger picture of labor as a whole, because pushing is just one part of that journey. So there's actually 4 stages of labor. We're going to break it down right here. And stage 1 is the longest stage. And this is when your cervix is actually dilating and effacing. You are going from 0 to 10 centimeters. You've probably seen visual representations of this and understanding that your body is going to dilate to that 10 centimeters spacing. And also, I talked about this in an episode before, not only dilating, but it is effacing. So it's thinning out, it's shortening, it's getting softer, and there's a lot going on in this first stage of labor. Even that first stage of labor is broken into different sections. So there is early labor, active labor, and then transition. So all 3 of those is actually just stage 1 of the laboring process. And each of those phases feels a little bit different and brings on its own set of feelings and vibes and everything that's going on. You know, going from 0 to 4 or 0 to 5 is not as intense as 5 to 10. And then even just that last stretch from 8 to 10, that's more our transition phase. And that's the most intense part of stage 1. So this stage 1 is where you're really just working through contractions and your body's doing all this work of opening up and getting you to stage 2, which is what we're mainly talking about today in this episode. And that stage 2 is the pushing stage. So this starts when your cervix is finally fully effaced, fully dilated, baby is lowering down, and that is when we can get to the pushing stage. And even when we get fully dilated, sometimes you aren't quite jumping into the pushing phase. It could look different for everybody, but sometimes that stage 2 has a little bit of a pause, even though stage 1 is complete. And then stage 3 happens after your baby is here, and this is when the placenta is delivered. And that's usually pretty quick after you deliver your baby. I would say within 5 minutes is typical. Maybe 20 minutes, a half an hour if uterus is just slowly contracting, if it's just taking a little bit more time. But usually within that first 20 minutes, your placenta is also delivered. And this is one of those things too that kind of isn't talked about, isn't mentioned, or maybe is overshadowed. People don't talk about birthing the placenta necessarily after birthing your baby. And you do have to slightly push it out. So it's just obviously not as intense as your baby, but there is some pushing that goes on during that stage 3 and delivering your placenta. And then finally, we have stage 4, which is a couple hours postpartum. And this is that really early bonding time recovery window. And this is when your uterus is fully contracting down. Most of the time you're doing skin to skin. Everybody's kind of in that golden hour moment. You're just embracing what has happened and you're calming down. And so that would be stage 4. So back to stage 2, our pushing stage. This is the big moment. This, for some people, is the most intense part of labor. And for others, it's surprisingly short or just kind of a blur. You're, already kind of going through so much. And you've maybe been laboring for a long time, and so now it's time to push, and it's just a big mix of emotions and feelings and things that are going on. But either way, it's where all the work your body has been doing leading up to this moment starts to move your baby out and down and eventually into your arms. So you might be wondering, how long does pushing actually take? How long are you going to be pushing for? What does that look like? What is the typical duration of time for pushing? And so for first-time moms, it can last anywhere from 1 to 3 hours. Obviously, there has been situations that personally I've been at births that it extends past that time. And I'm sure either people that are listening or, other stories that you have heard, it's definitely possible to extend past that 3-hour mark. But on average, for first-time moms, it's about 1 to 3 hours. If you've had a vaginal birth before, it often goes quicker than that. So sometimes it can be 15 to 30 minutes, but again, everybody's different and every birth is different, and there are just so many different and unique situations that can be going on and happening. Anywhere from a few minutes to a few hours is what you can expect from this stage of labor, this pushing stage. And some common questions that I hear about pushing is really, how do I know if I'm pushing effectively? What if I don't feel the urge to push? What happens if I push too early or too hard? Can pushing hurt the baby? And these are all totally normal questions. And the answers honestly really just depend on a few things, like whether you're unmedicated or if you have an epidural. What is the baby's positioning? How tired are you? Where is your body feeling different sensations, and how is your body feeling at this point? There's a lot that's just kind of going on, and you can prep for some of these things. Pushing effectively, you can practice that. You can go see a pelvic floor therapist and have an internal exam to see how your pushing is going when you are actually in labor and pushing. If you would like, your provider is typically able to tell you if you are pushing effectively. They are able to, again, internally feel and see if you are moving the baby and how that process is going. If you do not want that to happen, obviously, you don't have to have that happen. But if it's helpful, which in sometimes it is, then that's definitely something that can be done while you are in labor. And as far as feeling it, again, that's really like, unmedicated or even with the epidural. But even with the epidural, you are feeling the pressure. So you're feeling that continuous pressure. You're feeling something going on, a different sensation happening. And I always say, it's only too early if your cervix isn't fully dilated. Let's say you get the urge or the sensation to push, but your provider checks you and you aren't fully dilated. It might be a good time to just kind of wait and relax and breathe because you don't want to tear your cervix. That can cause a lot of just more internal tearing and issues. We're going to talk about tearing and ways to avoid tearing in another episode, so look out for that if you're interested in that. But yeah, there's just a lot of questions about pushing. There's a lot of different things that are going on. Again, going back to, if you're pushing effectively, your team, your provider, you're looking to see if baby is continuing to come down with each push. Crowning is more visible. There's some visible progression. You're having good use of your breaths and your muscles, and it's all kind of just tying together and working for you when you are having a contraction and pushing. So we're seeing some sort of progress, and most of the time that can start to be externally too. So it doesn't have to be internally examining, but we actually can start to see the progression externally, and we can see the crowning happen, and we can see that visible progress. This is all something that your provider or a nurse or your doula will be able to give you some feedback and support on along the way and when you're actually in the moment. Because again, like every birth is different. Even if you've had previous vaginal birth, your baby could be positioned differently. You could, be maybe medicated versus unmedicated between different births. So there can be a bunch of different factors that are altering your pushing stage that it's good to have somebody there to provide feedback, or maybe you're utilizing a mirror or something like that to really see the progression happening and know that you're pushing effectively. As far as the pushing stage goes, I'm going to break this down a little bit right now into an unmedicated birth versus a medicated birth, or, working with an epidural. Starting off first with unmedicated births. And that just means, no pain medication, things like that, things that are altering the sensations that you could be feeling during the pushing stage. When I'm at a birth and the person is unmedicated, even in my personal experience, when I was unmedicated, this is where things are getting really raw and intense. And I honestly think it's one of the most beautiful experiences. This is where you're really seeing the instincts and the intuition and that primal characteristics of birth come out, and it's really, really awesome to watch and see that happening because all the hormones are working, all the sensations are happening, different things are going on, and it's really just an awesome experience. No matter how you birth your baby, is completely up to you, but there is just something a little bit different when it's unmedicated. Most likely, before you get to this stage, if you are having an unmedicated birth, there are going to be moments of disbelief. You are going to say, I can't do this. You are going to doubt yourself or wonder, like, is this going to end or what's happening? There's a lot of just, again, like different emotions and different feelings and things going on. Or you can just be like completely the opposite and ready to go, and you know that you're finally there and you've almost reached the finish line and you are just ready to push. A lot of people will get this overwhelming, almost involuntary urge to push. You will just kind of have that sensation, know that you want to push, start making different sounds, and that involuntary urge to push, we call that the fetal ejection reflex. And this is when your body literally starts to just do the work for you. As a doula, I usually step back a little and just hold space at this time because your body, it knows exactly what to do. And it is just going to naturally start going through that pushing stage. And some techniques and some things that we might do or see at this time is you can request to have spontaneous pushing. And so this is when you're pushing based on your body's natural reflexes and urges rather than being told when or how to push. So if you are hooked up to monitors and it's seeing when you're contracting, they might encourage you to push during the contraction, hold it for a certain duration of time. Typically, this is 3 10 counts. So counting to 10 3 times, or maybe they're counting to 8 if, that's a little bit of a lengthy process during each push. But spontaneous pushing is just letting your body push when it wants to, and you're listening to the natural reflexes that it's having. And this often includes a lot of just breathing out, making some low sounds while you're bearing down. You're just kind of going through the motions and feeling what you want to feel. And it's less about holding your breath and more about just going with the flow of what your body is telling you what to do. So you're not curling up, holding your breath, bearing down. It's just sort of releasing, relaxing, letting your body do what it wants to. As far as positioning, some really great positions for the pushing stage would be squatting, kneeling, leaning over a ball. If you're not hooked up to any other monitors or IVs, you got a lot of options here. And so gravity is really your best friend as far as the pushing stage and helping you here, all fours or standing, whatever really feels good to you in the moment and what you feel like you can manage and withstand for the duration of the pushing stage, knowing that you can switch it up and move into different positions if you want to. I've definitely been at births where pushing is a little bit more of a lengthy process, and so they're getting into a whole bunch of different positions. And then just remember to rest in between pushes. You are not pushing nonstop for an hour to 3 hours. We are, again, like pushing when your body is having those natural reflexes, or we're pushing, every few minutes when we're having a contraction. But we are breathing and resetting, and we're sipping water, and we're staying grounded in between all of those contractions, in between all those moments of pushing. Really keeping this in mind and understanding that it's a whole production and there's a lot of factors going on, and you might need to reposition to help baby move, and you're listening to your body, and there's a lot going on. And the spontaneous pushing is typically more supported by the midwifery model. A lot of organizations and providers are familiar with this, but sometimes if you're not explaining beforehand that that's what you would like during the pushing phase, and more so especially if you are at a hospital, they will start to encourage you to get into a more ideal position for them, which is usually up in the stirrups, legs wide open, bright light down where all the action is happening. That's totally fine if that's comfortable for you, but know that you have options. If you are unmedicated, if you're not hooked up to a bunch of monitors, if you don't have the epidural, you can choose how you want to be positioned, what feels comfortable to you, and how you want to push. So making sure that that is part of your birth plan, making sure that is something that you're discussing with your provider beforehand is going to be super, super helpful. So if it's kind of laid out, even if you're in early labor or that stage 1, really expressing that, making sure your partner or your doula is telling your provider this or the nurses this and saying like, hey, when we do get to the pushing stage, she wants to be more spontaneous pushing. She wants to be in whatever position she would like to be in. Whatever that might be, just having those conversations beforehand really goes a long way so that it's not just standard protocol happening in the moment and you're kind of all fuzzy, you're not really able to advocate for yourself at this time, and things are just happening. And then that kind of leads more into the medicated birth, having an epidural and really working around the pushing stage with an epidural. So if you are planning on getting an epidural, or even if you're not, but you end up deciding on getting one, pushing does look a little bit different, and that's totally okay. You might not feel that strong urge to push. It might not be as clear. You might be kind of unsure if you are there or what that might look like. You might be getting a lot more pressure or just feeling different sensations, but you're not really sure if this is that urge to push. So we still have some tools and some strategies and some different things to really help make this stage smooth and so that you feel empowered during the whole time. You know how I was saying about spontaneous pushing, directed pushing is another way that I was kind of explaining and might be more beneficial when you have the epidural. So this is that directed timing with your contractions, counting for 10 seconds, really bearing down, laboring down, whatever your provider might phrase it as. You are waiting after you get to that 10 centimeters, giving yourself a little bit of a break, allowing the baby to come down on their own, and then helping by actively pushing, putting a lot more power behind the pushing. This might be more beneficial to have someone help just explain when to push or if you're doing it effectively, because you do have a slight disconnect between feeling everything that's going on. Some helpful positions that you can do, even with the epidural, can be side lying. You can even use the peanut ball early on in the pushing stage when you are having baby come down. So maybe let's say you get to 10 centimeters, they check you and they want to see baby descend a little bit more still. So you can use the peanut ball to help open up your pelvis and allow baby to come down more. You can just do some gentle repositioning to help with baby's rotation and help baby descend. I have even, depending on the strength of your epidural and how much sensation you are still feeling, I have had clients go on all fours even with the epidural. So you can really get creative. There's also a position that I love. It's like a throne position, and that's what it's called. You can look that one up too, and that's really helpful when you have the epidural because it is working with gravity again. You're basically in a very upright seated position with your legs at a 90-degree angle, and you're sitting up in this throne. So that's a really good one. They also have squat bars. This is one that you can do with either no epidural or with the epidural. And sometimes the squat bars, even though you have the epidural, you can use all your upper body strength to hold yourself into a deep squat. You can really get creative. There's a lot of different things that you can do. Maybe when you are touring your hospital or whatever it might be, you can ask and see what different things that they have. Do they have birthing balls? Do they have peanut balls? Do they have squat racks? How do the beds change? How do the beds allow you to be in different positions? Ask these things and see what that might look like. Maybe if you aren't able to tour the hospital beforehand, you can ask your provider, what different positions am I able to be in? What does that look like? Do you have examples? What have you seen be most effective? Really just understanding that there are different possibilities and that there are different ways that you can be positioned. And that can be super helpful. And then again, using a mirror can be helpful because you are seeing the progress. You are able to connect more with your body when you're able to visually see the progression happening. Even just touching and feeling and seeing your progress when your baby is crowning. This is one that you can do for both scenarios too. Like you can feel your baby crowning, and sometimes that can be a really good motivation to know that your baby is right there, and it can be super helpful. And then if you have the epidural, it's allowing you to feel that progress, which is going to be super helpful. I also just want to talk about that emotional side of pushing. Pushing isn't just physical work. It's very intense emotional work too. Some people feel really powerful, others feel scared or vulnerable or exhausted. Who's all in the room when you're pushing? Who's talking or saying different things? What kind of things are happening in the room? There's a very deep emotional side of it too. You're getting towards the end, you know that your baby is going to be here soon because you are at that stage. There can be tears and laughter and everything in between. And, as a doula, my part of the job is to really just hold space for that and to remind you that you are doing it. You are doing exactly what you're supposed to. And even when it feels impossible and you feel like you've been pushing for a long time, and it's just getting exhausting, you are most likely right there. You have already done so much and you are just so close to holding your baby. Just remember in the moment that it is safe to let go, that you're strong. You got this. This is your moment. This is you bringing your baby into this world. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to have different feelings come up, and just remember to, let that go and just embrace it and say whatever you want, feel whatever you want, and really just lean into it. And then if there are any partners listening, just remind your partner that they are strong. Just keep on saying all these things. Remember that this is all that they're going through. And so this might be a really good episode to share with your partner so that they can get an idea of what you're doing and going through and what that might be like. And I just want partners to realize and understand that their presence is important too. Don't underestimate how important your presence can be during that pushing phase. Just holding their hand, whispering things into their ear, kissing them on the forehead or giving them kisses, just really letting them know, hey, I'm here and you're doing amazing. You don't need to be a coach or an expert. You don't need to be the doula. You don't need to have all of the techniques. You just need to be there and just say really encouraging things. It might feel cheesy and silly and awkward, but it is going to make all the difference because we remember those little whispers and what's said and who's there. It really is just so encouraging to feel that presence and to know that there is somebody there with you and for you. So partners, you are playing a big role in this too. I remember I had one client who it was just so awesome to see them work through the pushing phase because the partner was just as into it and ready and going. And it just seemed like he was pretending to push when she would push. And he was just saying like all these really encouraging things. And he was so amped up and so motivated and so just fun to watch. Like I could feel his energy. And it was really, really cool just watching them work together and enjoy this moment and bring their baby into the world. So, that doesn't happen all the time, and you don't have to have all this high energy and crazy emotions and things like that. It can look different for everybody, but just being there and supporting them in this time is super beneficial and super helpful. And then remember, if things don't go as planned, which can happen, sometimes pushing ends up needing some extra help. Maybe baby just needs a little bit extra assist. There are situations where vacuum or forceps might be necessary. Maybe you're surpassing that 3 hours, 4 hours, maybe even longer, and baby's just not looking like they are coming down. There can be a number of factors going on. Maybe you are in the pushing phase and heart rate is dropping for baby. There are decels happening, just deceleration in heart rate. They might say like there's decels happening or baby's heart rate is dropping. Whatever it might be, there are definitely moments that things just aren't going to plan and it's all happening in the pushing phase. There might need to be different situations going on, and it could be a little extreme or a little in the moment, seem very overwhelming. So I just encourage you to research that and look that up. Look up assist with pushing, vacuum assist, forceps, and then also look into cesarean birth and what that might look like. Obviously, as a VBAC mama myself, I try to encourage different situations and ways where we are not ending in a cesarean, but I also know that that is something that is possible and unavoidable at sometimes. It can be an emergent situation. So just familiarizing yourself with that and knowing what all of your options are in all of those different situations so that you're not overwhelmed, you're not scrambling to find answers, you don't know what the right choice or decision is. It's a really great idea to just know all of your options and all the different possibilities so that if it does come to that, if things don't go as planned, you still feel really empowered, you're confident in your decisions, and it really just eases any additional stress that can occur at that time. And just know that none of this is a failure. You are not failing. Your body is not failing you. It doesn't diminish or erase the strength and the effort and the love that you are bringing and what you have done to birth your baby. Sometimes just things go not according to plan, but when we know all of our options and we feel really prepared and we feel empowered in the decisions that we're making, it really helps the transition and the experience be more empowering than it might have been if we completely ignored all of those other things. Oh, that's not going to happen to me. That's not going to be my birth. That's not going to be my plan. And we're really just aware of all the different possibilities. So, whether you are roaring your baby out in a tub or quietly breathing them out into this world, or you are at home, a birth center, a hospital, an operating room, whatever it might be, however you are birthing your baby, you are incredible. The pushing phase is wild and intense and beautiful. And it's, as always, as a doula, it's really, really cool and awesome to watch and experience. But to go through it personally too is such a surreal moment. And it still amazes me every single time what our bodies are capable of. So I hope this episode helped you feel a little bit more prepared, a little bit more grounded, a little bit more aware of what the pushing stage is. As always, share this with a friend and let me know what you thought. Let me know if there's any other topics that you want to hear about or see or learn more about. And so, yeah, thanks for being here. Thank you, mamas, so much for listening. Remember, you are a rock star. I believe in you. Let's doula this. Let's crank it up a notch and let's kick it into high gear together. Hit that subscribe button, share this episode with a friend, message me, email me, call me, beat me. You know how to reach me. We're doing this, mamas. I am so excited to catch you here next week. This is your one-stop go-to place for helping you find the resources you need to make the best choices for you and your family during pregnancy, birth, and most importantly, postpartum. See you later, mamas.